U.S. Congressman Andy Biggs, member of the House Oversight Committee, who was one of those who questioned Cheadle yesterday. Congressman Biggs, first of all, your reaction to the resignation, and then fill us in on what it was like to try to get answers from her.
Well, Harris, good to be with you. And I will tell you, the difficulty is that she should have resigned almost immediately. I mean, she took it 10 days, and it was because she wanted to actually continue in that position. We couldn't figure out why. The right thing was for her to resign. If she wouldn't do it, then it was for the Biden administration to fire her. Yesterday, she didn't want to answer any of our questions. I can't tell you, I asked a number of questions, things like, was he a lone gunman? Was he acting alone? Was the gun up there already? Did he have to carry a gun? Those types of things that I think American people want to know.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and she wouldn't answer them. She deferred to the FBI.
I have to cut in because we do have that breaking news statement now from President Biden. I'm glad you're with me, Congressman Biggs, so I can get your first reaction. He's just released a statement, and here's the quote. Jill and I are grateful to Director Kim Cheadle for her decades of public service. The independent review to get to the bottom of what happened on July 13th continues, and I look forward to assessing its conclusions. We all know what happened that day can never happen again, end quote. Now, a couple of curiosities I have about that. Why is Jill included? This is not some sort of a condolence letter to someone after a loss, a personal loss. I would estimate she's included because the reason she even had that job as director of the United States Secret Service was because of her friendship with the First Lady. Your take?
Absolutely right. I agree with you that that's why Kim Cheadle became the Secret Service director. I also think, good grief, what do you have to do to be fired from this administration?
We don't know.
The only people that have been fired are, 4 staffers who smoked pot. But you have somebody who almost gets the former president of the United States killed, and does get an individual killed and other people wounded, and you don't get fired. What you get is a letter saying, "Gee, we're sorry to see you go," kind of thing. I'm incensed as much by the failure of the Biden administration at the very top, once again, to signal to the American people that he cares about the American people more than he cares about himself. And I think this letter reflects more personal care than it does patriotic care.
I know, and I invite our audience to watch this to the very end because you are in what we're about to show now. It is kind of a roundup of some of the hottest moments yesterday. We carried it stem to stern the hearing during this hour on the Faulkner Focus. Kimberly Cheadle's resignation, of course, follows that contentious House oversight hearing that you were part of yesterday. Let's take a watch.
Have you visited the site?
No, I have not.
9 days and you have not visited the site. You should have been there that night.
Would you agree that this is the most serious security lapse since President Reagan was shot in 1981 of the Secret Service?
Yes, sir, I would.
Have you provided all audio and video recordings in your possession to this committee, as we asked on July 15th, yes or no?
I would have to get back to you.
That is a no. You're full of today. You're just being completely dishonest.
Would you have tendered your resignation if he had been killed?
I think that I've admitted that I've taken accountability and will take responsibility.
As someone who said the buck stops with me, I'm going to stay in my job. I'm going to give the answers to the American people, and I know what happened, except for you're not going to tell us. When you sit here and repeatedly tell people, hey, I have to wait, as frustrated everybody on this committee, guess what? It undermines your credibility.
You know, it's very rare that we see these days Democrats and Republicans agreeing, and everybody to a person, nearly. I mean, we didn't hear from every single person on this topic. Some were talking gun control, the Democrats. But for the most part, they agreed that it was time for this woman to go.
Yeah, Harris, we rarely get that kind of unanimity on that committee. We fight like cats and dogs because we're dealing with serious issues. Mm-hmm. But everybody understands the gravity of what happened and her utter failure. Her failure to actually even go to the site. Her failure to actually give us answers that were legitimate that she could give without giving away the investigation. She didn't want to do any of that stuff. And she kept saying, I need to be held accountable. The buck stops with me. Well, the accountability finally hit. She finally resigned.
You had an uncurious person in that position. The buck stops with her. She didn't know what dollar amount the buck was. Is it really just a buck? No, it was, and you couldn't even put a value on the amount of responsibility that had been dumped on her. And she came ill-prepared. I want to get this in. Former President Donald Trump has just released a statement, and here's part of that. It's a quote. "She never gave me proper protection, so I ended up having to take a bullet for democracy," end quote. He told Fox News Digital, again a quote, "Many requests were made by on-site Secret Service for more people, always with a turn down or no response." And he went on to say, "I have the biggest crowds in history, and they should be treated accordingly." Our nation's 45th president, Donald Trump, however, again said big improvements have been made over the last week. So we've heard a little bit about that. But I mean, it really wasn't even on her watch because she couldn't tell you any changes, really. She said, well, I've made some changes, but she didn't give any detail. I questioned whether or not she could even give us an accounting of what was changing.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, what we saw, for instance, at the RNC, you saw a completely different team, a team of big, burly guys who were tall as the president is so they could actually provide that versus, you know, I'm not trying to denigrate the immediate detail that was there, but I mean, physically, they were very different. I mean, and that's got to be part of the protection detail, right? I mean, and she continued to emphasize she's a DEI type of director, and when you place DEI over merit, you're going to sometimes have bad mistakes, and she has a no-fail mission at the Secret Service to protect these individuals, and she utterly failed, and that's because I think philosophically she didn't get the full measure of the job.
You know, I'm glad that you and I have conversations on the air a lot because I can ask this question, and I know that you know I'll probably ask something like this. When you say DEI, you know, you get some people's ire up about that because she is a woman, but the point you're making is her last job was CEO for Pepsi. And while it can be a delicious drink, particularly with a slice of lime, I don't know if that was current enough experience in the Secret Service for which she served a couple of decades to be applicable to what was called upon her to lead at this time.
Yeah, I guess that's the point is, did she merit that job? Did she get it on merit, or because, as you mentioned earlier, because she's a good buddy of the Biden family and Joe and Jill are gonna protect her and help her out? And that really gets to the point. Everybody wants the best person that you can possibly have in the job. I mean, that's why you do what you do. You're one of the best, Harris. And the reality is we want people in this particular very vital, serious, very grave responsibility. We don't want to wonder, oh, well, you know, why were you hired just because? Or were you hired, you knew somebody, you were a friend of the Bidens? Or were you hired because you are absolutely the best strategically, tactically, physically, in training, and so you educate your troops. I literally talked to an HSI agent yesterday because there were HSI agents on the ground there. And I said, what kind of training do you guys get for protective detail? He said, we get a PowerPoint training. That's it. That's not training. That's putting a Band-Aid over something. That's asking people who are trained to investigate narcotics or illegal immigrants, those types of things, and saying, look, we need your warm body here, so what we're going to do is give you this PowerPoint training. That's what I mean by DEI type stuff, where they hired somebody who was not prepared to make the changes and lead this agency the way she should.
Last quick one for you, and we do have Republican Senator John Barrasso of Wyoming standing by. Congressman Biggs, how does her departure affect getting answers to what happened 10 days ago with former President Trump?
Well, she still is going to be obligated to provide answers because we'll put her under oath. She'll have to give those answers. And we're going to conduct a fulsome investigation. I'm told FBI is. I know that the Inspector General for the Homeland Security Department is also got an investigation going. We have to get, in my opinion, an independent commission staffed with people who are former protective detailees.
Interesting.
Who can do this and give us the answers.
Yeah. Well, now if she lawyers up, I would assume that it won't be the DOJ or the taxpayer dime that would defend her if anything should come up that she has to answer for. But we'll have to see how that shakes out.